Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
Got it. So, Kyle, this is our 66th episode.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I joke every time. The clap makes it real, man.
Yeah.
The clap
Yeah.
makes it real. We'll sit here and BS the whole time, and then as soon as you get the clap, you're like, oh, well, everything I say is being recorded.
Yep.
We'll break out that real movie,
Yeah.
the take thing, and
Yeah.
actually do it.
We need to,
Yeah.
We're like, whatcha?
Yeah. Action. You have to yell that too.
Exactly. Yeah. Action. I just, and then we'll get into this. Are you a Suits fan? Like Suits, the TV show Suits? Have you ever seen that?
No, I don't watch much TV, honestly. Man.
Yeah, I knowing your passion and your obsession with this, what we're getting ready to talk about, I can see probably why.
Yeah.
I just saw a thing on Instagram or something, like the New York City was really just a curtain. Like the skyline that they used in the set was really just a curtain. And everyone's like, oh, which of course you probably know that, but it's like, you don't want to. But anyway, I digress. This is going to be a fun conversation. So like I mentioned, we have Kyle Davidson from DCA Custom Arrows, just north of Indianapolis, right? If I'm right.
Yeah, just outside of 465 in Noblesville.
Noblesville. Okay, I'm going to be actually coming your way here at the end of August. I'm going to the Ironman Nationals motocross event it's like an hour northwest, Chandlersville. Does that sound right?
What was it again?
The AMA Pro Motocross Nationals there at Ironman MX. It's going to be right by you, so I'll have to swing by. But
yeah, definitely.
I'm excited to talk to you. We tried to get this to go on one time. We had some issues, and then schedules and things got in the way. So it's I'm excited to get it on. And last time I don't think we had the vanes in stock yet, but so there's been a big change there. Mm-hmm. We're now a retailer for them, so that makes it extra special for us. We've both been able to test the product, have it in our hand, and shoot them and give them a full real world situation. I'm excited to use them for hunting season, but we're talking about your vanes.
Yeah.
And before we get into all that, I want to get into the madman that you are, and crazy technical, and let's get into your background in engineering, and then kind of what got you started into archery.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I graduated from Purdue and then worked in research and development pretty much my entire life. And it's product research and development. So, with a lot of mechanical tied into that. And it's people bring me a piece of paper with a drawing on it and they're like, we want this thing. And so that's what I do. Go through, do all the mechanical design. I work with electrical engineers if needed, which it usually is, and then package everything up, make sure all the mechanical parts work correctly and all that good stuff. And being in research and development, you get a lot of new ideas that are new to the world. I work for a billion-dollar company, so I have, I think, roughly 30 patents with that company in my name. And then just recently, the patent for my Super Sabers went through very recently.
Awesome.
It was patent pending, and finally it's officially a real patent. I got like a book with a gold embossment on it and everything. It was pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't know they did that. What's that?
That's pretty cool. You probably didn't know.
I didn't know because I get them through my company, and they don't get that for everybody that was on the patent or anything like that. So it was super cool. I got it. I had no idea what's coming, but it was quite a feat to write my own patent, and I don't know if I would do it again. It was a lot of paperwork, and I hate doing paperwork. So, but I got that patent that's going through. But my passion is with arrows, and it's the physics of arrows, how they react in flight, how they react during the launch. The big thing that I'm really into is the aerodynamics of the arrows, and I've learned a ton. Kind of getting into the vanes. I ended up doing the vanes because I'm friends with Donnie Vincent. He was mentioning to me that he goes out to Alaska and hunts, and how important arrow noise is. And I have a video on YouTube where I talk about how it's not important, and then I'm talking to him, and he's describing it to me, and we kind of talked about why and how, and I came up with the analogy that when a babysitter in like the 80s, 90s movies is sitting there at the couch and she hears the creak, she's automatically on alert, and then anything she hears outside of that, she reacts to. And he of course laughed a lot, but he said, that's exactly it. The animal hears the bow, and then it hears the arrows, and it's trying to survive what it does every day. So I was like, well, that's an interesting idea. And I'd worked, one of my previous jobs, I worked with starters and alternators and the fans that are on those, and how, you don't want to hear that thing whistling and whining while you're using, especially like it was for heavy equipment as well as cars, trucks, things like that. But you don't want to hear that whistling no matter where you're at. And so I was like, I know how to do this. And I designed the vane, and I actually still have it on it's stuck on my laptop here. I can't get it off right now, but yeah, I designed that one, went out, shot it, and I was like, yep, this is it, done. And it was super dude crazy loud. And now I know why. Like, I look at it, I have it stuck on my screen right here because like it's good to remember to be humbled occasionally. And so
for sure.
Yeah, once I did that and it was loud, I was like, oh, this has got to change. And so then it just became, if an engineer thinks they're right and it turns out they're 100% wrong, then we got to find the answer. That's what kind of led me down that quest. And so when I was developing the Super Sabers, I'd always wanted to build my own wind tunnel for arrows. And so I'd been thinking about it for years and years, trying to figure out how to hold it and what I could use for the air and where I could set it up and all that kind of stuff. And I ended up figuring it out. So I would actually test my arrows versus other vanes, versus different vane configurations, different offsets with a broadhead, with a field point, different broadheads, all that kind of stuff. And I can run it and actually, get a lot of really good data from it. I recently got a 3D printer, and I've been going.
That's trouble.
Oh yeah,
that's trouble.
So I've been around in my entire life. Like at my job, we have 3 $250,000 printers. I mean, they're
awesome.
Beautiful, and they're SLS. They do an extremely good job. And so I always thought that like the personal home 3D printers were kind of garbage and they didn't do a very good job. Once I found out how good they were, I was like, yep, done. So I got one of those, and I've been modifying the pieces of the wind tunnel and actually upgrading it to be able to get more and more information from it.
That's cool.
Getting repeatable results is kind of the ideal thing with anything that you're using to measure. You want it, I put this in, I get this number, I put this in, I get that number again. And so that's what I've been able to do. And really just, a lot of RPM data, a lot of drag data, and then not only with the wind tunnel that I built, but also running the computational fluid dynamics. So I can, once I figured out the shape, and I shot, I'm guessing 50 different profiles. Like I would just get an idea, I would cut it out, and then I'd model it in CAD, just a 2D profile, model it in CAD, and then I would print that out, put tape on it, stick it on an existing vane, cut it out, and then go shoot it. And I just kept doing that and doing that and doing that, thinking I was going to hit it at some point. I was like, well, this is an idea. And I'd change the back of it, and then I'd change the front of it, and then I'd change, keep the back the same, modify the front, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And then, and what I would do is I'd go out and I'd shoot 100 yards. I put my phone at 70 yards. I would shoot at my phone, but the arrow would fly over it going to the target. And so I'd hear the different sounds as it went past.
Mm-hmm.
And with the Super Saber, I told the story before, but it's kind of ironic. So it's similar. The reason it has the name it does is because the idea came from the F-100 Super Saber. And I was actually just in Ohio at the Air Force Museum, where they actually have a F-100 Super Saber that's actually the Thunderbirds, this is my rap, but the Thunderbirds, look to it. It's a Thunderbirds F-100 Super Saber. So I got my picture taken, I kind of took a selfie with it and everything.
There you go.
I, of course, had a vane with me, of course, because just like in every one of my pockets of all my clothes, I have a vane. But
like the loose change.
Yeah. The funny thing is, so the shape was kind of influenced by the tail section of
the tail wing, right? Yeah.
Of the plane, but it doesn't behave like that. It behaves more like a main wing of a plane. But we could probably get into that in a little bit later. But so my background is doing the CFD and that, and then once I got a vane that was quiet, I would shoot it, and then I would bring it into the CFD program, and I could actually see how the air was moving around it. And I was like, that's why it. Yeah.
And that's is that what you have on the back of the packaging?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the same? Is that the same model?
There it is. So that's what you're looking for
as
far as the CFD goes. And I was able to mitigate the vortex coming off the back of the tip of the vane. So like if you look in mine on the CFD on the back of mine, off the back tip of it, it's fairly laminar. You're going to have a little bit, but the main thing you don't want is a bunch of swirling. That swirling that's coming off the tip, that's noise and it's drag. It's vortex drag is actually what it's called in the aviation world, in the aerodynamics world. And you could see it off of planes. Like, you see a plane pull up, off the tip of it, you could see a white trace. That's a vortex. That's drag. That's noise. That's literally how you see drag and noise. And vortexes are good if you're using them right. But
I was going to say, in case people haven't got already, this is going to be pretty deep.
Yeah.
but on the aerospace side, I mean, we have Boeing. One of the Boeing manufacturing plants is literally less than a half mile away from where we are right now.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and so that's, I mean, we're in a big industrial area. So, on that side, on the aerospace side, are they caring so much about the noise, or they care more or less about the drag, or does it go hand in hand?
Neither, honestly.
Neither?
Okay. So the drag is kind of what they're concerned about. So to stop that swirling off the tip, you'll see on planes where instead of just a wing, they'll have like a little winglet at the end of it, and that's to keep that from happening. But the main thing, and kind of the principle behind this double delta design, so it has two angles, this lead angle and then the back angle, and then the top and then the back, of course. But what it does, if you ever Google like F-18 vortices, the way they work is, as a plane, my plane here, if you look at like the main wing of an F-18, it has this little lead-in edge and then the back main wing. And this lead-in edge is a little bit small and the back wing is bigger. As the F-18 pulls up, because the thing with a wing, if this is a wing section, the wing behaves as it should if the air stays attached to it. And so as it hits, it goes up and around, and then as you pull up, that air will stay attached, and as you go even more, it'll separate from it. And when it separates, you get that low pressure on the back of it, and that's when a plane stalls. That's not what you want, especially if you're in a fighter. You want to be able to pull up hard and everything. So with an F-18, when it actually pulls up, and this is a good vortice. Like in Formula One, I'm a huge Formula One fan, and this is like vortices.
Yeah, I want to get into that for a second too, because there's been some recent changes that I'm sure you know from a certain team, and so I wanted to highlight that too.
Absolutely, yeah. Ricardo's back in, and we'll get into it. But if you Google F-18 vortices, you'll see where a little vortice develops off that front edge, and so as that vortice comes down back the wing, instead of the air separating, that vortice that's trailing off that front edge. So when you look at it, you'll see the wing, and you'll see a little white, looks like a tornado running down the main wing. That tornado is actually mixing the air that's above it, that's moving really fast above the wing. It's mixing that air with the air that's moving slower that's on the wing. So when you pull up, instead of the air separating off, it's being mixed with everything, and that keeps the air attached to it. So the plane doesn't stall. So every single plane, like the F-14 a little bit, the F-18 and everything after it, they all have that kind of double delta design. Sometimes it's baked in a little bit differently, but if you know what you're looking for, you could see it. In fact, when we were driving to the Air Force Museum, my wife sometimes, man, she just like shakes her head. But so I'm sitting there, I'm driving, it's raining, and as I'm driving, I'm just staring, and she's trying to talk to me. She's an elementary school counselor, so like an engineer and a counselor. She's like, "What are you thinking about?" Because I'm just zoned out, and I was like, see how the water's coming off the back of that Jeep? The reason that they're doing it that way, see that thing on the side of it?" And I'm pointing out all the aerodynamic parts of it.
I love that.
And I was like, awesome. You'll see that, like, this little design here is on everything within the last probably 2 or 3 years, because it's something new that they've learned. And then, like, see on the back of the trucks how they have the lip. The reason that is, the air comes up like this instead of crashing together and causing more drag. She just shakes her head, and it's like, I love driving in the rain because you could see how the air is moving around the car. So, I'm just a huge nerd about that stuff. I mean, I
love that he went this deep, because I just got a new F-150 about a month ago, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because on the back of my tailgate, it's got just a tiny, I mean, maybe an inch, and it's just a tiny little, and I almost thought it's great for like grabbing it and lifting the tailgate down, but it also serves dual purpose in terms of less drag in the truck. So it's to even think about like the most basic truck, mass produced, most purchases in the country, right? even to that, they're thinking about this stuff too.
Yeah.
So,
well, even the seams down the sides of the cars, which is what I was pointing out to my wife, you'll see the seam come down and then it'll be tighter undercut on the back of it. And that's even to create vortices down the sides of the cars to mix the air behind because you have low pressure behind your car. It'll mix that air that's moving faster outside of it. Those vortices will flow in behind your car and mix the air that's behind it. So it's all about, reducing drag. In that situation, it's all about reducing drag. But for planes and things like that, they definitely want to reduce those vortices off the tips. But you can use vortices are good or bad. Off the tip of a vane, they're really bad. I mean, that's if you shoot my vanes, you hear.
Yeah.
If you shoot another profile, especially a profile that has like a steep front angle, mine have a very laid. I mean, it's very low. If you have one with a steeper angle, that steep angle creates a bigger low pressure on the bottom of it. Like the whole back of the vane turns into a low pressure, and you hear that twisting coming off the top of it. It sizzles like that's the vortice that you're hearing. And so the Super Savers, and I actually drew on this one a little bit so you could see how the air moves around it. So as that little vortice develops off the tip of it, there's my finger. As it develops off the tip of it, it comes in and fills in back here. And the only low pressure that you have is just right here at the tip and barely at the front. And you could see it on my packaging as well. You could kind of see the different pressures actually on the packaging. But that's how it does it. And then since you have your low pressure further from the axis of the arrow, you still get the same rotation that you do with any other vane. You are just using the air a lot more efficiently, which does two things. Number one, it cuts down on noise, but it also cuts down on the buffering in the back of the arrow. Because if you shoot a different vane, it will create that low pressure, that big low pressure bubble on the other side. And if you ever hold your hand outside of a car window, like palm out, your hand moves around a lot because that low pressure bubble behind your hand, it's swirling and moving around. But if you can use it efficiently, then it's just a nice clean shot through the air. So that's what's important. That's what I learned is the biggest thing with them. But
and for the listeners, I got taking a step back too.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I got
no, you're good. You're good. He's passionate about it, and I appreciate that because it's not often that you find someone that like yourself that has seen this. I mean, this is your baby, and you're taking it all the way to where it is today. But we got to shout out Greg for even getting this conversation because your business started, and that is in terms of Greg Farrell, which we had on the show. But your business started with building arrows for people, custom arrows, and that's how we first found out about you.
Yeah.
And so when he's talking about these other products, and we don't have to get into brand name specifics because as a vendor we carry just about everything.
Right.
But you've been able to see the difference. I'm sure you have, knowing who you are, knowing how passionate about it, I'm sure you have data about some of the stuff that you've built in the past, and you're comparing that to what you're building now. You're not using brand Y vanes anymore. You're using your own vanes, right?
Yeah.
And so you know how that one flew, and now you know how these are flying now today for you based on your customer builds.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I ran the CFD on mine, I ran CFD on every vane. Like it would. Yeah. I just created a model that it would actually wrap the vane around it and everything, and I could just change the profile and it would update the vane. So I've run every vane that's out there, and I try not to mention any brand names because it's it's just not a nice thing to do.
Well, no. Well, you just got to worry about what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I just focus on yourself.
I mean, they're like everybody makes a good vane. It'll work. I just like to say mine are better, but they do work. I mean, that's how. It's not. They've been working for years, so it's not that big of a jump. The other thing that I did with them, real quick, even more nerdy. So like the back shape of it and everything, I ran it through the CFD. I optimized the air flow around it, and then I would actually run the same calculations that NASA does to figure out the stability of a rocket. I used to find the stability of an arrow. This is my short demo arrow.
Yep.
But so I actually optimized the stability of it. And what it does is, every arrow has a center of gravity. This one, it's about there. It's a short arrow. There's another point that actually affects stability. It's not the center of the arrow. Center of the arrow has nothing to do with the flight of the arrow.
Pressure, right?
Yeah. FOC is very basic math, I could prove that it's just not a really relative number as far as like stability. You could talk about it. I mention it to my customers because like they want to know. A lot of guys that contact me, some of them are very brand new to it. Some of them are very experienced with it. Some of them have been down the rabbit hole and they have no idea which way's up anymore. But
before you get into that though, I did want to mention. So we did have Troy Fowler on the show. And of course, he's kind of been leading the charge right now in terms of people building arrows with a higher FOC. T-Bone, we've had T-Bone Turner on, which, I mean, he's earned my respect to talk about the things as well, but he's got a different opinion about it too.
Yeah.
Have you seen customer? I mean, clearly you're math and science based. There's no opinion based in terms of what you're doing. Where do you kind of stand? And if that fits into what you're getting ready to talk about too, great. But like, how has the FOC game, if you will, changed the way that you've kind of looked at customer builds and just build, your own self and your own product?
I never honestly, like, I've talked to Tim Gillingham about it. I've talked to guys from Easton about it. I've talked to I'll say professional archers, just to kind of leave names out of it.
Sure.
And they're like, it doesn't make any difference. You could see guys that go and shoot professionally. If you ask Tim Gillingham what his FOC is, he might punch you. He's tired of the question. He's like, I don't know what it is. It might be 7. I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing that affects it the most are the 2 points that I'm talking about. So like the center of gravity and what's known as the center of pressure. So if you shoot an arrow like the wrong way, so it's coming at you 90 degrees to how you're supposed to, the knock will come to you and the point will go away from you. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Spin.
Yep. It'll turn, if you shot at 90 degrees to the trajectory that you actually wanted, it would turn and the point would go towards the target and the knock would go back towards you. If you look at it, like all the pressure that's hitting, all the air that's hitting it, that's what turns it. You could sum all that pressure into one point. That's called the center of pressure. And so that's actually the 2 points that matter, the center of pressure and the center of gravity. And I actually talk about it on the back packaging of the Super Sabers. I kind of give the same exact explanation about the center of pressure and center of gravity. And so on a long arrow, like this is a 29.5-inch arrow. And so like where my center of gravity is right there ish, and my center of pressure it's about here. Those are the 2 points.
Okay.
And so what you actually get is a lever arm. Everything rotates about its center of gravity, and the force that's acting on it when it's unstable is the center of pressure. That's where you could sum all those pressures hitting it. So the center of the arrow on mine is kind of, say here. And so my FOC is maybe 15%. But if I'm shooting a long arrow, like a 30-inch arrow with 10% FOC and a 27-inch arrow with 10% FOC, I'm sorry, a 30-inch arrow with 10% FOC and a 27-inch arrow with 15% FOC have the same stability. And that's rocket science. That's not argue with NASA.
Yeah.
So like when like the Range Fairy and guys like that, like I respect those guys because they are bringing a lot of knowledge and people are asking questions. And so when they say more FOC is better, they're kind of saying the same thing where you're getting these 2 points further and further apart. But my thing is it's not exactly right. It's just the more you put in front, the better. But the thing you got to remember, if you put more weight in the front of it, it's going to break the spine down more. So guys get into a lot of trouble by throwing like a 200 grain point on the front, getting too much flex to their arrow. But
yeah, and I think the cool thing is I've kind of come at that conversation open-minded because I think yes, people are getting really crazy into it, but I mean even Troy tells us himself, he's not shooting a 700 grain arrow. Like him and what's Rocket Man's name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
I don't even know if he just calls him Rocket Man.
Rocket Man, yeah, I know. Obviously, he's got a name,
yeah.
but the gentleman
that contacted me
he actually gave us his contact information. I'll have to pull it up on my phone. But they found through is it the lab radar that there's there's certain points and the trajectory of the arrow changes, and really kind of loses. And I'm coming at it from just a normal country boy perspective. But basically, the velocity, there's a diminishing return, if you will, on a certain point with a heavier arrow. So he gets a lot of slack for being the 700 arrow guy, but he's found that typically it's a 560 grain arrow, which really is not that far off from what someone's just building naturally. Like my standard Easton Axis, I think they're 9? Are they 9.1 GPI? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think what my arrows weighed like 4. Yeah, my arrows weighed like 460 when we did that. Remember we did the speed test on we've been starting to incorporate like speed tests with bows so people can get a real idea of what these bows are shooting. When we're doing our reviews, and I think we weighed them, it was like 460, 468, somewhere in that ballpark range off the top of my head. We'd have to go back and look at the video. So the cool thing is with him and other people like him and T-Bone, they're making people responsible now for what they're shooting. Yep. Once the arrow leaves your bow, it's all about what you've built. And I think that's the most important takeaway from everyone's opinion, regardless of where you stand with the arrows. It's like he said, making adult arrows. Now he's saying it in terms of doing what he's thinking you should do, but at the end of the day, it's squaring both ends. It's making sure your spine's aligned. It's properly, and like it's getting high quality components. Like I think that has been the biggest change in the industry with these gentlemen. Yeah,
that's what I was saying. They're pulling people's attention to look at these details and things like that. But like I dive in deep with everybody I talk to. I mean, like if somebody in my neighborhood's walking by and they hear my wind tunnel going or something, they hear me shooting in my garage, they'll come by and talk, and then I'm into vortices and drag and blah, blah, blah. It's just where I go quick, but it's important to think about those things, but it's important to look at everything. Like when I build an arrow for somebody, I ask them, how far do you shoot? Because that's important. What do you shoot? Where do you shoot? What kind of animal are you shooting? Are you going to shoot a tack event? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And a lot of people are like, I'm going to whitetail hunt and I want to shoot a tack event. So I need 24 arrows. And I'm like, well, let's see what you got first. And then we end up with an arrow that does both. And it's not sacrificing one for the other. It's like, okay, you want to shoot 100 yards. So you need roughly 290 feet per second in that area. Mm-hmm. And then, but it's like, I built arrows. I built thousands of sets of arrows. Sure. And not only that, but I get feedback from those people. So it's like they go out, they hunt, and then they tell me, they share the pictures and all that kind of stuff. I don't post any of them. I wish I did, but I just, like, I'm a one-man show. I am DCA Custom Arrows, so I'm responsible for the builds. I have one guy, Tyler, that helps me fletch. He's an awesome guy. But I do, like, order the vanes. I go to Kokomo to get them. My vanes are all made in Indiana. I mean, like, I designed them here in Indiana. They're molded in Kokomo, which is 45 minutes north of me. I'm going tomorrow because the Saber Minis, or the Mini Sabers, I think Mini Sabers are coming out. And so they're going to be molding them. They're actually molding them. The first shots they're going to do in 2.5 hours right now. And so I can't make it today, but I'm going to go up tomorrow and see how it goes. But they got to like tune the mold to get them going. So it'll still be a minute to get them going. But there'll be a lower profile version than the Super Sabers and a little bit shorter on the foot. So something that's set up mainly for like mechanical broadheads, field points, 3D shooting, tack events,
smaller
broadhead.
What's the comparable? Like if you're going to compare it, like for the listeners, so real fast for the listeners, these are almost a little over 1/2 inch height.
Yeah, they're 0.55 tall, and then they're 2.25 long.
2.25. And I'll tell you, we held you to the standard of 7.1 on the weight on the grains. And you did pass. Yeah. You did pass. Well, I measured an entire box at the store on our last chance scale, and they all passed the 7.1 grains. So they're very comparable to what you're finding, like the Max Hunters and the other stealth vanes and things like that. They're a little bit taller profile, I think, than the stealth vanes, but they're very comparable to the Max Hunters. Same height as the Max Hunter, same height as a Blazer. But so if everyone knows what a Blazer is, and so exactly. If they've seen that, then they can kind of the listener can get an idea of what they're looking at. Yeah, exactly. The new ones, the Mini Sabers, I got to remember, I'm horrible at the marketing side of this stuff, but so they'll be shorter. They're like 0.465 tall, and they'll be 2 inches long. So they'll be a 1/4 inch shorter and
just a little bit shorter as far as the height goes. And it's
same profile or same profile design, just kind of shrunk down.
Similar, but I did go back through, like I ran. Come on, man, you know me. I ran through all the same stuff again, and the angles changed a little bit, but like,
okay.
If you just saw, if I held this up and I held up a mini, you'd be like, those are the same vein. But I mean, if you look at them next to each other, they are different. This edge is a little bit steeper, so it's a little more straight up and down. The back is a little bit more straight up and down, but and it's shorter here. But yeah, it was funny because I ran. Once I got the profile of the Super Saber, I ran, I don't know, 15 or 20 different actual runs on CFD, and it takes a while to run that. But I would run it, and then I would go to bed. Sometimes I'd get up in the middle of the night to come down and see what the results were. And then, but yeah, on the minis, now that I know what does what, I was like, oh, I ran one run, and I was like, oh, I want more of this or less of that. And it took 3 runs on it to get it to where I want it. So
nice.
Not that I understand everything. I will never admit that I know everything or anything, but you kind of find some things out, and then you're like, yep, that'll work. And so I've had prototypes of the minis out. I've had a couple buddies that are engineers as well as archers, both great engineers and both great archers, shooting them, and feedback is extremely good. Yeah,
I'm excited to see them. You'll have to let me know when you get some that we can take a look at.
For sure,
I'll be excited to see. Yeah, I'd be excited to see the difference between. I still gotta get you some. I probably have like 30 or 40 left from Fletching my dozen.
Cool.
Yeah.
I went through. It's a funny story. So Kyle makes his own wraps. My man here has a vinyl. What is it, Cricket?
Yeah, just a little Cricket.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so he made me wraps, and I told you I got a new truck.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell you this. This is the first time it's Ben's hearing this. So Ben made me all these wraps, and I sold my truck, and they were in my old one, and I had them I had them in a cardboard box, just like I took everything out of my truck and put it in my garage in a cardboard box, and I was going to go through it later. And I went to build because I knew that we were going to talk, and I wanted to get them done for this archery event for Justin Ross.
Yeah.
And archery hike. Shout out Justin, great event. But so I'm building them. And I had to go, and I was like, shit, I can't find the ones that Ben made me. And I went and I bought some, and I fletched them. Dude, what do you think I did when I was in the garage one day? I came across that box, and they were all there. So I had double practice. I fletched 6 arrows, stripped them down. I was like, I can't use this. I got to use what Ben sent me.
Yeah.
Stripped them all down, and I got good practice. So I have a very good idea of how well these. It's all I'm swinging it back around. I have a very good idea of how well these are made. I have a very good idea of how well they stick, especially with the 2.5 degree helical. I did go right helical. I didn't switch.
Yeah.
I wish I would have switched, but I just don't have the jig set up. So I did go to 2.5 with the angle finder, which you can talk about too. That tool that you first sent us. I knew he's going to have it. Yep. So it's pretty cool. So Kyle's holding up it's an arrow shaft with a custom vinyl sticker and a knock on it, just like you would find. But it has all the angles. So if you guys are fletching your own, the VAT vein angle tool, which I don't believe we have yet, but it would be something that I'd be interested to have. Maybe we can get it in.
For sure.
But it's an arrow shaft that's got all the angles, so you can check that stuff. If you guys are like, hey, I'm running helical, I want 2.5 degree, it's going to tell you right there exactly how it lines up, so you can get a good idea. But I did the same process on these as I did on my Max Stealth veins, and they were just the Max Stealth is a little bit more flimsy of a material, so I was comparing it, and as stiff as these are, they're still soft as I drop them off the table. They're still soft where they need to be, which I really appreciate. It made it a good experience to put them on.
Yeah.
Good squeeze out, good seal. It's good material.
Yeah.
And the reason why we bring that up too is because you switched materials.
I did. Yeah.
So, and that's when we were originally going to talk. You were just getting ready to come out with the 2.0. So take us through the production process and kind of, okay, you have this great idea, you have it on paper, you shot it. Now I got to get this thing molded, and I got to get it, created so we can actually bring it to the market. Walk us through that process, because I think it's probably pretty interesting for the listener.
Yeah. So, being a mechanical engineer here in Indiana and working in research and development, we can't a lot of the molders that we use for my day job, we are local. And so we need to get, before we go into big production, we get small tooling, bridge tooling made so that we can make parts and actually test them, because you can only take like a 3D print so far, and then you have to mold it. You have to see what variation you're going to see. You have to see what the shrink is, where the draft is, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we have these molders that are around, and I ended up going with one of those who's up in Kokomo. And so he was running my first material, and a buddy of mine who I made during this process, because I talked to people, and like a guy in my neighborhood deals in plastics and is a chemist. And so he knows like exactly, try this and try this variant of this. And I mean, it's like, there's so many plastics out there. Like I know a lot of them from my day job, but like talking to this guy, it's like, holy cow, dude. He's like a wine guy, but it's with plastics. It's like, oh,
it's like
you gotta try a little polypropylene in there.
Oh, I love it.
So he was like, oh, talk to this guy. And that guy was like, oh, you should talk to this guy up in Chicago because he runs our sports division of it. And so I call that guy, and I'm talking to him, and I'm telling him all about it. And he's all excited about it. He's like, oh, we could try this, we could try that. And I was already running the original material because I'd found that it worked good for what I was doing. I thought it was good. It was. I could shoot through a target 3 times, and then it would start to ripple a little bit. And for the listener, you can't even buy that material anymore. I actually, when I got the new material, it was so much better that I was like, I don't want to sell the older stuff anymore. I called Lancaster up, who also resells them, and I bought all the stock back from them. So like I
remember you telling us that.
Yeah, I have tons of those vanes, and I just can't take myself to destroy them yet, but at some point I will. But the new material, got it in, and still to this day, this guy up in Chicago calls me, super good dude. And he's like, I like talking to you. I was like, I don't mean to monopolize all your time, because he's like 2 levels above where I should be talking to. And like a salesman, and this guy's like the director of sales or something. But he's like, dude, I love talking to you because you're so passionate about it. Like I talk to engineers who are making, dishwashers every day, and they don't call me back. Or they call me back 3 weeks later. They just don't care. But you're like, something's always exciting happening. And so he would send me stuff, and I took the little 10-pound bag that he had. I took it up to the molder. The molder's awesome. He's a hunter. If Rusty's listening, but took it up there, and he knows I'm crazy, and he's like, yeah, we can run it. And so he runs it, and we're checking it out. And I was like, dude, this stuff is awesome. You can.
Yep.
And it's good. It stays shape. It doesn't deform permanently. And I've done that with this arrow hundreds of times, and it always goes back to its shape. And so it was just a really great material. Bought it all back, destroyed everything. Well, not destroyed, it's actually in my basement, or I'm in my basement. It's in my crawl space. But anyway, I got the new material going, all that stuff. And even today, like, we're modifying the tool in small ways to make a better product. So we're always learning, experimenting. You go into the manufacturing side of things, and you like learn new things. And so one of the things, like the Bing base on some of them still today is smooth, which works. Everything works well, but the new ones have a little bit of a texture to them, and that texture allows the cyanoacrylate, the crazy glue, to get in there and actually hold well and bond to it. I did a ton of testing. I actually have buddies at Loctite, and I used a bunch of their product. They recommended stuff. It worked pretty well. I got a bunch more. I just kept testing it, and actually ended up with Bob Smith MaxiCure as like one of the top ones. It's just bulletproof. You put it on and it sticks. I actually sell it on my site now.
I saw that.
Yeah, but it does a great job. That's what I fletch with, and my buddy that helps me out, Tyler, he fletches with the same stuff, and it was just like, does it hold well? Yeah, they all held pretty well. Is it easy to use? Is it reliable? Is it, can you store it? Is it blah, blah, blah? All these factors that we were looking at, which one do we want to just use for all of my custom builds? And that's where we ended up with it. But always looking to improve everything. And like if we learn something new, we implement that. And like I said, my molder knows I'm crazy, and he's like, yeah, we could try that. We could try that. And we've actually just been like, I'll go up there and hang out this is the advantage of doing it, local.
Yeah,
I'll go up there and
100%.
hang out. We'll be running them, and I'll talk to his wife who actually runs the mold, and she's like, it'd be better if this. I'm like, you know what? That is probably true. And I'll go talk to Rusty, and we'll be like, yeah, we could do that, and we'll make the change. And then what I do is I always bring up a little arrow shaft. It doesn't usually have the point. It's usually like that. I'll bring up an arrow shaft when I pick up a set. So I buy them, a big box at a time. I'll just reach in there and grab 3, and at the mold, I'll fletch them onto a piece just to double check everything and make sure everything's good to go. Because there's a lot that could go on. I mean, rubber and cyanoacrylate don't always like to play nice together, so you really got to be careful with it. But yeah, working with him has been a great process, and I've learned a lot. Even doing my mechanical engineering job, I've tons of things. But when you're paying the money for your own mold, it's different.
Yeah, it
hits different, as they say. But
as the Gen Z kids will say these days, right? I'm out of that language, but. And that's what I think is really cool too, because it's not a product that is made and manufactured in China like so many things are these days, and you don't have with that you don't have that control. Like he said, if there's an issue, he's a drive away from being up there and taking a look, and so the quality control on the product is extremely high, and you can tell that, and I think people can get behind a product that's made in the United States, but more importantly, we're a Central Ohio company.
Yeah.
He's a 3-hour drive away from us, and so it's not only that, but made in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I can really get behind a product that is made from a very similar place to where I live, and it seems like Indiana is full of engineers. I mean, it's just if you're from Indiana, you're an engineer. So.
Yeah. We have Purdue's here, and then we have a lot of industry around us. I mean, down around Indy is Allison, and there's a lot of race teams in Indy now. Not only just Andretti. Speaking of F1, Andretti's actually, I heard they're going to allow 2 more teams, and Andretti's going to be one of them. So that's actually in Fishers, which is not too far from me.
Yeah.
So if I disappear, maybe I'm there. I don't know.
He'll be on an F1
team. Those guys are I'm reading Adrian Newey's book right now, and it's incredible. I mean, that guy is he's a living Einstein when it comes to race car dynamics and aerodynamics. It's insane, a whole nother level.
And it was funny because when we talked to Greg, he was like, "Yeah, I know a lot about arrows." I mean, he's kind of on the same level as what we would be. We've dabbled in it, but he's like, when I talk to Kyle, man,
he said, I'm just going to give them to you.
Exactly. He's like, I'm just going to tell him what I want to build.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm sitting there fletching mine. I kid you not, I'm sitting there fletching mine. I was like, Kyle's probably putting exactly 6.5 drops of glue on each vein.
Yeah.
As I'm just like.
It's I think I build most of First Light's arrows. I know I build
in terms of a team.
I build for at least 3 people, Greg being one of them, at least 3 people in the offices. I build for Giannis Patelis.
Yep.
Jordan Budd. I don't build for Steve, but maybe
you
someday.
Yeah, let's get it. Greg, let's go, man. Let's get it happening.
Oh no, Greg, dude. Greg is the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. He
really is.
So my son has leukemia. He's doing much better. We were talking about it beforehand, but I posted on my site about it as well. But he's doing a lot better, and I really appreciate everybody's thoughts and prayers and well wishes and everything like that. He's doing great. We really got blessed on just this is the situation, this is the goal, this is the process, and it went as smooth as you could imagine. There's a lot of people out there that need a lot more help than I do. So, but I do appreciate everybody's prayers and everything like that. But in any case, Greg, I was talking to him. He knew my son was sick because Greg's awesome, and he's truly a friend. I don't care where he's working. Yeah. This guy will always be my friend. But my son, Luke, likes watching the Meat Eater show. And I told Greg that, and I sent him a picture one time, actually. It was just over my son's shoulder, and the show was on the TV in the background. And he's like, I might be able to do something. And so Greg arranged it so that Giannis and Steve both Okay. Both sent Luke a message, and it was he was just like, he
That's
thought it was
awesome,
part of
man.
the show. And then it was just like, Giannis up in a tree stand going, "Hey, Luke, it's Giannis Patelis. I'm up here in a tree stand." And he was just like, he just said my name. And he
Oh,
goes on, and Giannis was born in Indiana. And he's like,
yeah,
I'm from the same place you are. And then Steve's out on a boat somewhere, in the waves, and he's just like, "Hang in
yeah.
there, bud, you can do it. And dude,
That's
it was a
awesome,
big thing
dude.
for all of us. But yeah, just the fact that the community kind of
Hmm.
rallied around and helped him out. It anything to make him smile at that point in time was, man, I
That's
would have
huge.
dropped any amount of money on it. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. Those guys are class acts for
yeah,
sure.
Oh yeah, I've only had one thing. I would like to get Giannis on because I feel like we would have a lot of cool things to talk about.
he
And I
actually texted
know
me while I was talking to you guys, so I
that's
got to.
awesome. Yeah, we've had a couple connections there too between yourself and then our friends over at the Ohio Outdoors podcast who I think Giannis uses the Sirius archery arrows or
I'm
something
not
like
sure.
that. I can't remember how it's set up. That they have a connection with First Light too, and they talk to Giannis. But that's cool, man. And both of those guys being dads and having kids that are
Yeah,
of the same age as your boy and my children, it makes it that much more special. But I remember they did a live tour, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but they did a live tour and they were in Cleveland back in 2018, and I went up and I was fresh into hunting. Like
yeah,
I still hadn't made any friends in the industry. Like I was, I was doing it by myself, and Giannis sat there and talked to me in front of we stayed in the same hotel that next morning after their show, and he stayed there and talked to me for 5 minutes while his car was running,
oh
and
yeah,
it was just like, I mean, he's a larger than life figure. He's like 6'4". I mean, he's a very tall guy. I came through the what are those revolving doors, yeah, and boom, there he was, and I was like, oh my god, that's like I just
yeah,
was talking to you yesterday. I just saw you yesterday on the show, and that's awesome, man.
yeah.
That's
It's funny
awesome.
because like the first time that I talked to him, Luke was in the hospital. I was there with him, and me and my wife would switch off. And it's just, I mean, I know you guys have kind of
Yeah,
had some unfortunate touches with cancer
yeah,
as well, but I was in the hospital with him, and then like we were switching back and forth, and I was actually building vein angle tools in the hospital at one point, just because
yeah,
he would sleep a lot, and I had work I had to do, and life carries on. But
sure,
I'm there. He wasn't feeling great, but we're kind of starting to stabilize and all that kind of stuff. Basically, just side effects from the chemotherapy would make him very sick, and
exactly.
not not in a life-threatening way, but in a just super uncomfortable, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, Greg calls me or texts me, and he goes, "Hey, can Giannis Patelis call you?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Are you serious?" And so Luke was awake, and I said, "Luke, do you care if I talk to Giannis Patelis?" And Luke looks at me with big eyes. He goes, "The Latvian Eagle?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Sure." And so I go down the hallway and I talk in this, they have like offices kind of set up that you could talk in. And yeah, super interesting guy. And like you said, just a regular guy. I mean, these are just normal guys that have a passion for hunting and they're on
Yes.
TV. But other than that, I mean, they're regular guys. And Giannis is a very technical guy. He loves,
Hmm.
he'll call me up and have, a list of questions for me and I'll explain them the best I can. And when I explain something, like I'm not a smart guy. I'm just obsessed with this stuff. And so I can dumb everything down almost to like a fifth grade level because that's where I need to be able to digest it. So I just
Yeah.
watch, learn, listen, run harder, work harder, and figure it out. At least to the point where I need to. And then, because I like the aerodynamics and stuff like that, there's guys that are way better at this stuff than I am. But I could get to the point where I get the information I need, and then I can back that up in a wind tunnel. I have a lab radar that I shoot with as well, and so I can see all the effects of everything and run the CAD and run the CFD, do the calculations that NASA does and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he's a super interesting guy. Been there, done that, and um, very interesting to talk to him. When you talk to him, he's not in a hurry to get off the phone. Donnie Vincent's the
Yeah.
same way. I talk to Donnie 45 minutes every time I talk to him, minimum.
Yeah.
And it's
That's awesome.
just an interesting guy. Both of them are. So yeah, really lucky to have those guys kind of be interested in what I'm doing. That still blows me away that people even care.
Oh, yeah.
When I opened up and people were like, yeah, I want to sell arrows, I was just like, I'm a huge nerd that just sits in my office and builds arrows.
Yeah,
man.
man.
But people are like, no, we dig what you're doing. I was like,
I mean, how long did we talk? I mean, we probably so those that didn't listen, we had a situation that come up when we were recording last time, and so we had to cancel the show early, and this was several months ago. And when was that? Beginning of the year?
Yeah, it was 6 months at least.
I mean, it was beginning of the year. We were going. I mean, this conversation's been brewing for at least 6-7 months, and we talked that much. And then you sent some product, and I was able to test it. You were like, as soon as I get the 2.0s, I'm going to send. I mean, I think you were announcing the 2.0s on that recording. Like you hadn't even brought them in the public. They weren't even public yet. We had to wait to release it.
Yeah,
that's how long ago this was happening. And so you had sent me some to test out and to show Brandon, our buyer, and he, and it took a 5-minute conversation with him playing with it, us talking about what we've done, and we're like, yeah, let's get him in the store.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think. With respect to all companies, I don't think that there's a product that we have in terms of vanes that has had this much thought put into it. And what it's going to lead me to my next point is, so there's a lot of information on the back. I'm Joe Smith, the hunter.
Yep.
I see all these products. I see, there's several different vanes out there. How, for us and for you, like, how do we get it to the point where we let the customer know? And I've heard PJ Riley ask you this before too.
Yeah.
But how do we get to the point where we let the customer know all the stuff that goes into this and why it's that much better than its competitor in the market that it's in? Like, how do a salesperson, how does a buyer, how do you sell it to someone who may not be as in depth in terms of what all goes into this?
Yeah, and I think so. Like when I go out and I buy a TV, or you buy a laptop, or you buy anything that has a little technical spin to it. Number one, you want to make sure the person you're buying it from knows what they're talking about and not kind of giving you a line trying to sell you a TV. So what I try to do, because there is so much baked into these, I mean, I could talk for 3 hours just about vanes. And I think just letting people know, people that I talk to and I'm like, oh, have you heard of my vanes? And they're like, hell yeah, I have. That's why I'm calling you. It's like, I want you to build arrows and I want your vanes on there. They know that I've done the CFD. They know that the things with the, when you hear about it, you hear about like, oh, he used the same calculations NASA does. He has a wind tunnel in his garage and he has this. And so if you don't understand everything that I'm talking about, you can like go out and see it. That it's based on the same things that the Air Force uses and NASA uses in order to control vortices and keep planes from falling and all that stuff. So it's just like, even if you don't understand it, that the science is there. It's the same thing like with the back of the card. It's like, that looks like something important, and that makes sense, and then that's how I put them on. So it's like, I try to show people that like I've done a lot of work on these things, and then when they know that, then they're like, yeah, sounds good. It's like he did the homework, I'll copy that kind of thing. And that's, like you said, that's the same thing that PJ asked me when I did that one. He was like, dude, these are crazy. And then he told me, he was like, I've never heard of another company doing all the work that you've done. And I was like, it's, if you paid an aerodynamicist or an engineer to develop these things or to develop anything, you could not afford it, because I'm the one that kind of like, I'm interested in it. I have access to be able to do this stuff. And so now I do it because I'm obsessed with it. I'll never make money back that if I, for 2 years, developed these, probably a year and a half just on the shape and everything. But like if I went back and figured out my hourly rate and tried to figure out what a real aerodynamicist make, you will not get the money back. So you can't do it. But I think just knowing that somebody was obsessed with it, that did all the homework for it, and it's there, and it works. So you could go out and you can shoot them and they're quiet. Like, that makes sense. What he says is true and it works. And I've had at least 5 people, I kind of lost count, but at least 5 people tell me that these were the only veins they could get to stabilize like wide broadheads. And, the other part of the science is having all this area in the back of it that adds to the stability. So if you see one that's like a parabolic shape, it has the back cut off. It doesn't have much area in the back. Like you can't get another vein and cut that profile out because of the area in the back of it. Having all that area in the back actually adds to that center pressure that I talked about.
Yeah.
If you picture like a weather vane on top of a house, it's like a chicken or something. If you add it, when the wind blows, it turns into it. And if you add a big plate to the back of it, it's going to turn faster. And that's kind of a generic 5th grade explanation of stability with them. And the more you have on a vane, it makes a drastic improvement on your arrow. Because we talked about center of gravity and FOC and all that stuff. People are always looking to stabilize their arrow faster. Well, if this had a broadhead on the front of it, and I mean just a regular fixed blade, not a giant one, but just a regular size fixed blade, inch-ish fixed blade, and you have a long, like parabolic style vane on it, especially the length. The length is kind of the killer, and not having that area in the back. You can move that center pressure. When you put a fixed blade on the front of it, it'll pull the center pressure forward a lot. It's like adding veins to the front of your arrow. And so going with those long parabolic veins, your center pressure might be up here, and with mine, it'll be 4 inches different. And, talking about the stability and where you have that lever arm, we've all been trying to get like a lug nut off. Put the old extender on there, man, you'll pop that sucker right off. It's the same thing with those. So instead of adding a lot of weight to the front of your arrow and like really messing with the weight of your arrow and the spine of your arrow, because the more weight at the front, the more it breaks down that spine. You just put my veins on it, and it'll stabilize it instantly better. But the long parabolic veins work. Everybody's been shooting them for a long time. It's just, I think mine work better. That's the...
Well, yeah. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I would sell them.
The one thing that I've liked, too, is... did you go for Fletch last year?
Well, that was the question I was going to ask at some point.
Go for it, yeah.
I noticed, Kyle, that when you send these arrows out and you're custom building them, and most people, they run a 3 Fletch.
Yep.
What if a guy comes to you and says, hey, I've always ran 4 Fletch? Would you do that, or is there a benefit to having 3 over 4, or why do you always do 3 over 4?
So going back to the NASA calculations and actually figuring out stability, I know that 3 of mine are more stable than 4 of the long parabolic, like a max stealth profile.
Yeah.
So if you have 4 max stealth on them, 3 of mine are more stable. Again, this is NASA calculations, are more stable than that. The other thing is the air, when you add a 4th one to it, the air that actually moves around them changes. And so with mine, they're kind of optimized for 3. And so you get all the benefits of running 3 with mine, over 4. 4 on mine are louder than 3, but 4 of anything are louder. Like 4 max stealth are louder than 3 max stealth. So it's optimizing that air and kind of maintaining how the flow should be done rather than getting a lot in there. Like if you, for instance, in NASCAR, they're all moving around and everything like that. The more cars you have moving around, stirring up the air, the more unpredictable it is. So 3 works great. If somebody has been shooting 4, we talk about it, and usually they get 3.
Yeah.
I had a guy that was like, I normally shoot 4, and I said, I kind of explained everything to him, like I told you guys, and then I said, I'll make you a deal. I'll put 3 on there, and if you don't like it, I'll take them all back and I'll put 4 on. And he said, done deal. And went out, shot him. He said, you're 100% right, man. I love 3 now. And I sell veins. So, like, if you put 6 on there, I'd love it, man. But, I don't have it. I actually fletched one. This is 3, but I actually did one in 6. And it looks awesome because the profile, it looks like a turbine on an engine, but I don't do that. And I'm selling the veins. So listen, I would sell more veins if people 4 fletched or 12 fletched or 100 fletched. But you really only need 3 with mine, and that's for a giant broadhead. When the minis come out, I have a guy that's been shooting minis with every broadhead that he has, and he said that the minis, even in a 3-fletch, still stabilize those. It's not as stable, but you get more clearance, you have less drag, it's more of a slick profile. Mine have very little drag, but when you're kind of looking at aerodynamic drag, the biggest thing is just the profile. So I'm showing the back of the arrow, but if you could reduce that down, then your frontal area actually changes, and that's bigger input on drag rather than height. But like mine have less drag and fly. You get over a max stealth, which is a little bit of a lower. Mine still actually fly smoother and faster than a max stealth.
And I'm interested to see, because I still have, and maybe I'll have to go back. I still have max stealth veins, so I could certainly run this comparison. I still have the same Easton Access match grades. I have like a couple that I hadn't fleshed yet. I just needed 7 or 8 for this event, and then I'm like, so I still have 4 left, I guess. I could totally put and do a test on them. I mean, it's not something that we would compare from a company, but maybe from personally. I can tell you that my first experience, I fletched these. I shot a few at 20 yards just to make sure that my bow was good. And that was still, I think 30 yards just to make sure that was still good. And then I went straight to an event that had severe uphill, severe downhill, shooting through crooks of trees. And Andrew, who's on our pro staff team as well, he's got the green ones.
Yeah.
And we both shot at a full-size elk target 80 yards through the V of a tree, like the crook of a tree. And the guys behind us were like, it was like bow fired, thump. And like 80 yards away, you heard the thump. Like you didn't hear, like it was dead silent. And I was like, wow, man. Like, because you don't really, close range, it's so fast that you don't really get an opportunity to really take it in. But when you're shooting at distance, 60, I'd say 60 plus, your bow comes... your bow comes down long enough that you can still hear, and the vibration and noise from your bow comes down long enough that you can wait for that thud, and that it was like dead quiet. But I do have some video footage of myself where I shot a bag target at my house at 60, and I just set my phone up next to it or halfway through to listen to the arrow. And so I do need to double back and try that again and see like what a difference is, because in the grand scheme of things, people say this all the time, but like it's the difference between running super high-end camo versus cheaper stuff, or running Beeman arrows or Carbon Express arrows, cheaper brand arrows versus a higher quality arrow. Anything that we can do as hunters, as anglers, or anything to stack the cards in our favor, I think that makes a difference. And if it's just that vein being like a quarter of a decibel quieter at 60 yards, I think that makes a difference. Like it has to. Like you've seen how fast these animals can react to stuff, and so anything I can do to stack the odds. I'm not the best hunter, so I need all the odds I can possibly get.
Yeah. Not only that, but you get the quietness, you get the stability, you get less buffering because of the different low pressures. They're super durable. It's people are always like, well, I want a quiet vein. Well, I want a stable vein. That was always the debate, because you could have a tall, stable vein.
That's loud.
And actually, I'm friends with Greg Poole, and so I have a quote from him that actually, while I was developing these, so I'd already been shooting them and stuff. They weren't out yet, but there's a quote from him, something about any vein that is over a half-inch tall is a truck. It's loud. LOUD, loud. He goes on and on like Greg does. I love him, man. He's so funny. But he said any over half-inch tall 2-inch vein is loud. LOD, loud. And so I saw him at ATA, and I was talking to him, and I said, I have a quote from you. And he was like, yeah, probably. I'm sure a lot of people do. He does all kinds of podcasts. He's always, in the spotlight and doing things. And he's like, I don't remember it, but he said, yours are 2 1/4 long. And I was like, touche, man. So
That's
I
awesome.
was like, it was funny. But the debate's always been, do you get a quiet vein, which would be like a Max Stealth, or do you get a super stable vein like a Max Hunter, or a
attack
Blazer?
vein or something?
You can have both. So it's like debate over, right? Just buy some of mine.
Sure. Well, and that leads me to my next point. We've been going on for a little bit now. I'll let you get going. But so like I mentioned earlier and throughout this show, this is something that we carry at our stores.
Yep.
So Hebron, Lebanon, and Obetz, all of our main hunting locations. These come in 5 different colors. I know I have 4. I dropped one. We have Flow Orange, your standard white.
Yep.
Flow Green. He's going to bring them up yet. Flow Green, Flow Yellow, and then Flow Pink. And they're all very bright, and they're the colors are very bright, vibrant. You might not, you can pick up the pink a little bit. If you guys are watching the YouTube videos, definitely, again, this is another shameless plug. Our podcasts are available on YouTube. So everything that he talks about, he actually brought, the arrow or the vein in front so you guys can see all the things that Kyle's talking about. But check that out. I mean, the orange is like legit. I mean, that's like safety orange. That's bright. Like you're not going to miss that. And so these are available at all of our retail locations. They come in packs of 40 veins.
And 100,
so you can get 40. That's what, I'll say you offer 100. We carry the 40, $21.99. So it's a great price. It's it's competitive with the rest of the market.
You don't need a prep pin either. So in the box is included an alcohol prep pad. And all you have to do, is every box has them. Wipe the base of the vein, put it in your clamp, wipe the base of the vein. And, you're not painting something on, so just wipe it and then let that alcohol evaporate. Put the glue down. I recommend Bob Smith MaxiCure. And then put it on there and you're good to go. And if that alcohol prep pad dries, just everybody kind of builds with alcohol anyway. And just whatever you have, 70% isopropyl is great, 90%, whatever you want. Just what you're doing is just taking some of the grease that might have gotten on in handling, and it just makes a better surface. All the cyanoacrylates recommend that you clean the surface. I mean, when you're painting, surface prep is important, so it's just part of that.
It's the most important. My process would be I'll alcohol wipe the shaft, do the wrap. There's a debate on the wrap. I like it just because of the easy cleanup. If something happens, if I were to tear a vein, I don't have to scratch my carbon. Prep the wrap with alcohol. I just use a paper towel with 70%. I actually use the AE primer pen just because I have it. I'll go ahead and put them in my Bitzenberger, my jig, paint it, set that one down, or do a couple of them, set them down. And as I'm doing the last one, the first vein that I prepped, the other 2 are drying. 10-15 seconds on the Bitzenberger, it was locked in solid. They weren't moving around. Switch it to the next 90 degrees or whatever, and 120. I'm not 90, 120. We're not for fletching. But switch it to the one. Switch it to the next one, and you're good to go, man. So they it's fun. It's fun. Some people just want to come in and buy arrows, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's what you want, you don't have the time to think about it. But for geeks like us, it's calming. I put a Netflix show on or let my kids watch TV, and I sit at the kitchen table and just go at it, have a beer, and enjoy myself.
I've watched so much Formula One practice, qualifying, and races, fletching arrows. Like, I couldn't even imagine. One quick tip for everybody: if you do use alcohol before wraps, if you wipe it with alcohol, let them sit for a long time. Let them sit for 20 minutes, something like that. Don't just wipe them and then roll them, because the alcohol takes off the adhesive. And so, like with carbon especially, like with metal, it's different. You could wipe an insert with alcohol, set it down, it'll be dry pretty quick. But with carbon, it absorbs it. So you need to wipe it and then let it sit. That stuff has to be dry, especially like if you're doing a hit insert. I've talked to a lot of people that have been putting together inserts for other companies, and they'll come out. And the reason is because they put alcohol on a Q-tip and clean out the inside of it, which I do and I recommend. But put them, if you wipe out the inside, put them point down and leave them, man. Just do something else. Otherwise, you'll get antsy and pick them up and do it. But let the alcohol evaporate. That's super important with all that stuff.
Oh, for sure. Well, sweet. Well, I won't take any more time. Do you have any more questions? I know, like he said, he could talk for another 3 hours, but I think it's a great product that both of us stand behind, and the company as well. And so we're super happy to have you on board. Hopefully, we can get those minis and keep the train rolling on those too, and give some people some more options. And who knows, you might have more colors and stuff coming out. I think some blues and some reds, and I know you said black at one point. There's a lot of cool colors that you can probably to get to bring out too. But
I don't have anything else. I was just trying to absorb all the information. It was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it, like I said, is on the back, and so you can read it and slow it down. And the funny thing is, when I did the back of it, it was, it was about that big, and I kept getting it tighter and tighter. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys carrying them. Like I said, I'm a one-man show, and trying to eventually do this full time. And there's a few other little shops out there that do it, and I just really appreciate the heck out of you guys for supporting me and my family, and letting me do all this crazy stuff. And I'll keep coming up. I have another vane besides the Mini that's going to be coming out much later, and then I have other products that I'm working on too that I won't even talk about. So
there you go. Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited. Don't spoil it on us. We'll that'll give us another reason. That'll give us another reason to bring you back on here in a couple of years. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm headed to Indiana here at the end of August. So, I might have to talk my buddy into making a pit stop and at least saying hi. And and I wish you guys the best of luck. I wish your son the best of luck.
Thank you.
It sounds like things are going good, and I just really appreciate this friendship.
Yeah, same guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for trying to get our schedules to line up was crazy, but I think we talked and it was like, oh God, that was 3 weeks ago. We were talking about that.
I know.
Like, where's the time gone? So yeah, appreciate you guys sticking with me and with my products and supporting me. And if anybody has any problems at all, contact me. And I like to get to the root of the problem and figure out what's going on. So let me know if anybody has any problems or questions or anything like that, and swing by and see these guys and pick up some vanes.
There you go. And like always, all the contact information, all the social handles are in the description.
Perfect.
And of course, you'll see this podcast on all of our social platforms as well when we do release it. So thanks, Kyle. We appreciate you, and have a great afternoon, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys.
All right, everyone, that is all we have for you today. We really hope you enjoyed our conversation with Kyle. I know that episode got super technical, but we hope it provided some good insight into what all he has done to build some of the best archery components in the industry. As always, we appreciate you listening, and until next time, enjoy the pursuit.